Hey guys, thanks for checking out my latest video. For this one I'm going to make an illustration of my car. What I'm going to do, I'm going to sort of run it kind of like a tutorial, kind of just me talking through the steps of what I'm doing. So if you want to follow it along and make something like this yourself, you should be able to use it, but it'll also just be a nice informative type video. So I'm going to do the illustration of my own car. If you want to do it of a different car, obviously you'll be able to find photos. If you want to do it of yours, you can take photos. What I recommend is you find high-res photos. So if you're using a camera, use the best camera available to you. Use the best image settings on that camera. If you're going to search it on, say, Google Images, look for the best quality image you can find. One that doesn't look like pixelated and blurry. One that has a lot of information, because the more information in the picture to start with, the more information you'll have for the finished piece. So the start point is really important. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some photographs. The other thing I will say is, if you're taking the photographs yourself, take as many as possible. If you're using a SLR type camera, DSLR, make sure you play around with the settings a bit just to make sure you get a perfect photograph. There's nothing worse than getting home, opening them up and realising one's slightly blurry, or the lighting isn't right, or many other things. So get more photographs and you can dispose of them if you need to. Okay, so now I've got the photograph, I'm going to open it up in Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop CS5, but other versions will do the same thing. Also, other image editors will be able to do this as well. So I'm going to adjust the levels first, which will change the highlights and the shadows. It'll basically make the image look less washed out, as you can probably see as I'm flicking through the layers. You can also edit the car at this stage, so you can lower it or tint the windows or whatever you want if you want to make the car look a bit more interesting. All I'm going to do to mine is remove the number plate, because I know I won't keep the number plate in the final thing, so I'd rather get rid of it now. So I'll just wash it over with a layer of black like that and it's gone. And now we've edited our base image, I'm going to start on the actual piece. So the first step I'm going to do is make a white layer, just a blank white layer, and lower the opacity. What this means is to wash out the original image, and it'll mean that when I draw on top of this image, it'll mean the lines I'm drawing on top will be a lot clearer. So instead of having to draw black lines onto black lines on the car and them all disappearing and me not knowing what I'm creating, this will just wash out the background image and mean everything that goes on top will just stand out a little bit more. So now I've made that, I'm going to select the brush tool, and the first line I draw is a 2 pixel brush, but once I've drawn that out I decide it's not exactly what I want. I can go, because the image is quite larger than what I normally work with, it means I can use a larger brush. So then I've changed it to a 3 pixel brush, and I'm going to work with the pen tool. So the pen tool is great because you draw a line with that and it's really controlled. You can drag it to make curves or use sharp edges, but instead of it actually drawing the final piece, it just draws out a path for the brush to follow. So you draw out a line around the headlight and then you select stroke, which makes the path get followed with a tool you want. So it can follow it with an eraser, a paintbrush and a couple of other effects. It just means you can get a bit more control over the brushes instead of using the mouse and everything coming out wobbly and not being where you want it to be. It just means you get a nice line like that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to follow around the headlight just to show you a quick example of what that does, and then I'll fast forward through the rest of it and show you the finished image and get to colouring it in. Okay, so now I've got the sketch, it's time to add some colour to it. So first off I'm going to desaturate the image and quickly run through a couple of effects, not for the final piece but just to get an idea of how colour sits on the car and get an idea of the shading. It just makes the image a lot simpler and just lets me have a quick look and see what works, what doesn't work very quickly. I'm using the threshold effect and the cutout under artistic effects in filters. So now I've done that, I'm going to use the magic wand tool to select block areas of colour. First off selecting the outside of the image and inverting it and filling it in with grey to get the block based colour of the car, like the canvas I'm going to add all the tone to. And then I'm going to use the same tool to select areas of black like the holes in the bumper and the shadow on the floor, the tyres, and quickly fill in those areas. I'm expanding the path slightly just because when you use the magic wand tool it can be a bit hit and miss, but for this part of the work it does it quite nicely. For other parts it's an absolute nightmare, but once you know how to use it you're okay with it. So once I've done that I'll then use the pen tool and the fill option instead of the stroke option to draw out areas for the highlights, just because again that gives us a nice crisp line to work with and a nice smooth shape to fill in. So once I've put these colours on I'll speed up the video again just because it takes a long time to put all the colours in. This is really the large part of the project, but once I've done all that I'll slow down the footage or pause it and I'll talk about what I've done and then I'll put the background onto the picture. So there's the finished piece. I could do more to this. I could add a few more layers and a few more tones to give it more information, or I could add some fades onto the shapes that are already there. I'm kind of happy how it is. I think the fades work nice on curvier cars, so with this one being a bit more blocky and aggressive, I'm quite happy with the way it looks here. And also the more you add to it, sometimes the more it becomes a photograph rather than a piece of art. The problem is there's a fine line between a photograph doing a nicer job than the piece of art, and also it looking like an amateur piece of art. So different people will take it up to different levels. Some people really like the photoreal style. I like it more with paints. If I'm doing something on the computer, you can make stuff look like a photograph. You can take it super realistic, but then you might as well just use a really nice photograph and cut it out. So I'm quite happy with where it is now, and I'll leave it there and start to put a background on. So for the background, you can do pretty much anything. I could take the original image and run the same effect onto the road and the trees in the background. I could find a cityscape and put that in the background. I could do a wash of blank colour. I could do some abstract shapes behind it. Whatever you want to do or whatever you think will look nice, just go for. So for this one, I'm going to take some text that I had from another project. It's basically the name of my channel, and I'm going to play about this a bit. I'm going to twist it, I'm going to make it a lot smaller, and basically run a pattern of text through the background. So it'll look really simple, but I think it'll look simple but effective. It won't take too much away from the car, but it'll basically make it look like it's not sat on a blank colour. So I'll just make it a little bit more interesting. And if I was doing this for something else, I probably wouldn't put the text on like this, but for the purposes of me creating a nice piece of art for myself and making a video for this channel, it'll look perfectly fine. Okay, so that's the finished piece. I'm quite happy with it. What I'll do, I'll leave a link in the comments to the basic stock photograph and a link to the final piece. If you want to use those, create your own piece of artwork, feel free to. Please post it in the comments. I'd love to see what people create using those. Also, if you have any questions on parts of the video, please post them up. I'm sure I can help you out and get you back onto the right path. If you create anything using this, even if it's another picture of a car from something like Google, please post it in. It'd be great to see what this inspires. If you have any pictures of your own cars, I won't make any promises that I'll use them, but feel free to post them in the comments, and if I'm on another project or doing something and they're suitable, I will definitely use them, because I'd rather use one of your photographs, which means a bit more than just finding some random picture off Google. And also, it means that if you've took that photograph and you've given me permission, there won't be any copyright issues versus me finding an image which could be taken by a different photographer and running into loads of different issues. So feel free to post any pictures of your own. Thank you for watching the video. I hope it's inspired you. I hope it makes you create something, or it's just taught you something new, or giving you an interest in a new skill. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.